why don't people do what we tell them to do? What is what is resistance? What is this thing we as hypnotists are taught exists called reactance or resistance? All resistance falls under one of three categories. We instinctively, inherently resist anything that threatens how we see ourselves. If I have a certain self-image, what I deserve, not in there. No, this is new stuff. We instinctively resist anything that threatens what I think, who I think I am and my place in the world. If I grow up being taught I'm a low-life, no good son of a drunk, and I suddenly win the lottery, I will fight tooth and nail, unconsciously, to maintain that. So I will probably drink myself into a grave, squander the money, or find some way to get rid of it, because it doesn't match how I see myself. Okay? Even if you consciously know better. We're not dealing with the rational mind. We're not dealing with the conscious mind. It doesn't drive the bus. Okay? It's kind of like the navigator. But the navigator isn't the driver. How many times have somebody given you directions and you went somewhere else? Right? We instinctively resist anything that threatens how other people see us.
How we think other people see us.
If I know that people see me as this wealthy, powerful, charismatic, super hypnosis guy, I will fight tooth and nail to maintain that illusion and not show you the shitty car I drive around in, because it doesn't match the image I want you to have of me. Does that make sense? Famous marketer by the name of Dan Kennedy. Some of you might know who he is. If not, you should probably study his stuff, because some of the best covert hypnotists on the planet are marketers. Okay? They do in writing and through other venues pretty much the hardest thing there is to do, short of getting someone to sleep with you. They get you to reach into your wallet, pull out a credit card, and hand you their money. Hand them your money.
That sounds very familiar.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay though.
It's okay, because as long as you're getting value for it.
Yeah, here we go.
Guys, this is why most hypnotists are broke. Because first of all, they're not invested enough in their career. The average hypnotist can become a hypnotist for $500 or $600 and have as much credential as somebody who's gone for 700 hours of training and spent several $1,000s. There's no regulation. But one of the problems is the less you invest, the less you're worth to yourself. Mm-hmm. As a rule. This is why it's important to invest. Okay? And when you're dealing with clients, remember that when the clients, you tell your clients your prices and they say no, they're not saying no to you. They're saying no to themselves. Because if you were to walk up to that client and say, if I were to give you that change for $1, would you do it?
There's nothing left to do.
Right? If I were to give you that change for $10, would you do it? You just keep raising the number until they reach a point where they don't. And then you say to them, so you're telling me that this problem in your life is only worth this much. And boy, does that change their perspective. Because if they've just spent the last 20 minutes to an hour telling you about the most horrible, vicious, nasty thing in their life and how it's ruining everything about them, and you get to $80 and they won't pay $80 to fix it, what does that say about them?
Don't take it, see you later.
That's what they're worth.
So if you reframe it then, get said, what do you spend $80?
I don't know. Actually, I wouldn't.
Just let them go.
I would just say, I would just leave it there.
Right.
Because that's something, again, one of the things that, and Ed can speak to this, I came from a very, I'm a high-ranking black belt in a very controversial martial art. An art that, when it was brought out into the public, every established traditional martial artist on the planet said, bullshit. Fuck you, this is not real. It's not real, it doesn't exist. I know everything there is to know about these martial arts moves, and if my instructor knew it, he'd have taught it to me. Okay? And so, back in the day, we would walk into people's schools, and we would ask them certain questions. They'd give us certain answers, and we'd give them certain responses. Then we'd wake them up, and they'd ask, do you believe it now? And this goes to what's in your manual. It's called the 4 stages of learning. First stage is called unconscious incompetence. We don't know what we don't know. All of a sudden, I walk into a martial arts studio, or if you're at Lake, you go, hi, I'm at Lake. You guys do martial arts here? And they say, what's this move? How many people here do martial arts? Raise your hands. Okay, all right. We do X move, which we're taught is a certain thing, but it really means something else. They say, well, that means this. And they go, wrong, and we show them it means something else. So they thought they knew. They didn't know what they didn't know. And all of a sudden, we show them something different. They realize there's something we don't know. We are now consciously incompetent. We now know we don't know something. The next stage in the learning process is called conscious competence. Now, this is where we can kind of sort of do it for the test, but it's not natural like breathing or walking yet. In the case in this context of a martial arts where we're teaching people stuff that conflicts with what they were taught prior, there's this problem that happens right about here. They have to decide that it's true. They realize they don't know something. Okay, I'm taught that this move or this move is not the block, the reinforced block I was taught. I'm not blocking a chair with this movement. Whatever it is, we're taught how this move actually turns people's nervous systems on and off like a switch. They're confronted with that reality. Their paradigm by which they've been running and living their life has dramatically shifted to something else. At this point, they must make a decision. To adopt the new belief and move forward with the learning process and learn the new stuff, or they do what we call deletion.
And there are a lot of people that do that.
They delete the experience and go back to being stupid. Because the pain, the discomfort of accepting the new belief is too strong. They're too invested in the old way, and the only way that they can resolve the conflict is to pretend it never happened, to generate a rationalization that justifies being able to go back.
Too noisy.
Well, that makes sense.
Okay? In hypnosis, the term that describes this process, Translogic. An oxymoron, to say the least. Translogic. Okay? You will see this many times during stage hypnosis work, where we're engaging people in what we call a negative hallucination. Maybe I bring Ed up and I bring JJ up, and I have Ed sit in the chair, and I put JJ in a deep trance, and I tell him that the chair is empty, Ed is completely not there. And I tell JJ to go sit in the chair, and he doesn't. Well, it's an empty chair, go sit in it. No, I don't want to. I don't feel like I feel like standing. Go sit in the chair. No, I want to stand over here. Or go sit in that chair. No, I'll sit in this chair. And every time you ask him to do it, he refuses, but he comes up with a different reason for doing it. Right? Because even though part of him doesn't see Ed, there's another part of him that knows it's there. He's there. And he has to generate a rationale for not going there. How many people do you know that date the same person with a different face? It's the same process. It's the same process. Okay? Because the part of you that's driving the bus isn't the part that's navigating. Right? Time we got? All day? Okay.
David,
Yes, sir.
just to close the loop, number 3 on that list.
Oh, yes. Thank you.
I forgot 4 on the sub-list, too.
4 on the sublist. Oh. Thank you, guys, for keeping me square. I'll close these loops for you real quick. 4th stage in the process of learning, unconscious competence. It's like walking or breathing. We can just do it. Like when I riff hypnotic language, I can just do it, right? So turn it on, off like a switch, or just let it come out. That's cool. Now, getting back to the resistance formula, or the resistance protocols, or the resistance categories, it goes back to directly to this. We instinctively resist anything that contradicts or threatens what we accepted and believe and hold to be true. In these ages of 0 to 5, we have no information. We are one big blank hard drive. We don't even have a sense of self yet. And so therefore, mommy and daddy are me. Important rule here, that's an extension of that process. We instinctively resist or become reactant against anything people tell us. We never resist what we conclude.
Say that again?
We resist what people tell us. We never resist what we conclude. The realm of the covert hypnotist is to engineer those conclusions. Okay? I give you all the information you need to make the decision I want you to make by your own choice. I engineer the choices. All roads lead to my outcome, but you get to choose which path you take. That's how it works. DRT, that's right. Dirty, rotten tricks. Well, let's say, as a strapping young man of 3 years old, or maybe 4 and a half, mommy is at home and we're in the nursery, and she's teaching me about colors and shapes. We're having fun with our blocks or our toys or whatever. And mommy tells me that this is a blue triangle. Mommy would never lie. Mommy couldn't possibly be wrong. She's the goddess of my world. She changes my diapers. Right? She feeds me. It must be true, mommy told me. Right? And then I go to kindergarten. And teacher says, David, go draw a blue triangle. And I go, and she goes, no, David, that's a green circle. Draw a blue triangle. And I go, no, mommy told me this is a blue triangle. And now we fight to the death because that was there first. Remember, whatever gets there first has the most power. The way you're introduced to things will forever color everything that comes after it. Okay? Strategically, anytime you can engage or interact a person's earliest, most primal states and memories, the more pervasive the influence you have. Okay? But the 3 categories of resistance that you will run into: how we see ourselves, how we think other people will see us, what we know to be true. There's one more, but it's not resistance, even though it often looks that way. It's called reactance. Reactance is largely neurological and unconscious. It's part of the reptilian response. Come on up here, Daniel. As martial artists, we deal with it all the time. Now, I don't want you to yield or be overly resistive, but I want, if I try to pull him, see the drag? He wants to kind of pull that back. It's like, fuck you. Right? Right? If I push him, see how he kind of wants to gear up? That's physical reactance. We instinctively resist. See how he pushed? See how right? We instinctively, somatically, resist and push back against any perceived attempt or loss of personal autonomy. If I push him, his body wants to push back. Right? If I pull him, right? Pull might get a little bit less, but push, pushing us just pisses us off. I don't know why. Okay? Psychologically, we do the same thing. How many times have people given you great advice that you refused to take? In spite of the fact that you knew it was great advice, you agreed with what they said, but because they told you to do it, you said, fuck you. Right? That's reactance. Anytime we perceive a threat to our sense of personal freedom, free will, autonomy, we get reactant. Okay? Now, these are the areas that we as the covert hypnotists need to understand. Because they're points of greatest resistance, they can also become our points of greatest leverage if we build them into our presentations. We start talking about how you'll see yourself as this wonderful person, how other people will see you, young, strong, alpha, swaven to boner, right? And you'll know it's true because your life just gets better. Because you chose it, because you want it. I just nailed all 4 categories of resistance.
And you knock it down before you even have a chance to come back.
I engage it, because those are your primary propulsion systems against persuasion. So if I ally myself with them, you got nothing to resist. You're going to like yourself better. Other people are going to think you're cool. You'll see the truth of how this relates to every part of your life in a way that makes your life better. But it's something you want to choose, something you have to choose. Because whether you want, if you don't want it, that's fine. The moment I give you back your sense of autonomy, it's like, oh, okay. I want to do that now. Right? That's why you want to come to my next training.
Make that investment.
Give him a big round of applause. So when you're building, some of you are interested in writing copy. Okay, build it in. When you're doing your patter, your future pacing, build it in. Building in their autonomy, that they have the choice, that you can choose to do this, will cement in the change. Okay. $722. Okay. Let's see where I'm at. Last reason people won't do this: laziness and complacency. It takes brain juice. It takes chutzpah and energy to actually exert influence. You got to burn chi to get chi, right? This is one of the reasons why people come to seminars. They have amazing experiences. They get on the plane and leave all the skills in the training room, right? Because when you go to a new location, there's this phenomenon we call context anchors. Your sense of self, your sense of identity is linked to your stuff. That's Object Relations Theory 101 again. Your brain changes as the objects in the room changes. Okay? So one of my trainers, a very infamous one, used to say after a week of training with him, go home and burn your stuff. Well, most people won't do that. So just rearrange your furniture. Ever notice that you rearrange your furniture at home and all of a sudden life is different? Even though it's the same stuff, just in different spots? Okay? Yes?
When I was a psychology major,
Uh-huh.
we actually heard a story about how that's relates to addicts
Mhm.
and why so many heroin addicts die. If they use heroin in a chair that's not the usual one that they use,
Mhm.
their body doesn't prepare for that context,
Mhm.
and even the same amount of the drug can kill them.
Yep.
Just because it's a different chair.
Mm-hmm. Context is power. If you can control context, you control pretty much everything else. We are context-driven creatures. Period. Okay? Which is why, in many cases, when I was field testing a lot of the things that we're learning, I would go to people who are master practitioners in NLP, master hypnotists, and I just put the whammy on them. Outside of the treatment room, outside of the seminar room. They couldn't recognize the skills because they only learned them in a specific context. That's why I stopped training people with martial arts uniforms on. Because they take the belt off,
Gotcha.
and their skill goes away. That's why you go to any hypnotist, any high-level hypnosis trainer. There's a few exceptions, but go test it. Go up to any high-level hypnosis trainer outside of a seminar room, outside of their treatment room, and ask them to hypnotize you.
Been there, done that.
Notice how many of them actually do it. Because they can't. Because their skills are context-driven. I literally had one guy hand me a check one day. He's actually in my first Renegade Hypnosis video. He's an Asian guy. And I didn't know this at the time, but he comes up to me. I just done a meetup, and he comes up to me after the training, and he says, "You're a very good hypnotist." I said, "Thank you." "Can you hypnotize me?" I said, "Sit down." "Sleep!" Boom! I put him in a deep trance, gave him all kinds of happy feelings. He comes out of it and goes, and he signs up for my hypnotherapy certification on the spot. Turns out he had gone to like every major hypnosis trainer in the San Diego area when they were doing a meetup or something and said, "Can you hypnotize me?" And none of them would do it.
Outside of the teaching.
And these people are doing it, been teaching hypnosis and certifying people longer than I have. I've been teaching hypnotists for almost 15 years. Well, closer to 12 years, but I've been teaching hypnotists, not certifying them. Because when I started teaching, everybody that came to me either had no hypnosis training whatsoever or they had a ton of certifications and couldn't do a goddamn thing. And for many years, I did not want to add to that mess. I would help you, I would teach you, I would train you, I would give you a real skill set, but I wouldn't certify it. I would make you functional. And then about 2010, I met this guy named James Situ, who you'll meet this Saturday. He'll be coming in to hang out. I call him my corporate seduction specialist. But he's got a good head for business. He's a recruiter for Fortune 100 and 500 companies. He works with guys like Bill Gates, Carl Sagan, weird stuff, but high-level guys. And he uses this stuff professionally, so he's a good person to listen to if you've got business applications in mind. But he goes to me, "David, you need to start certifying people. The people who coming through your masterminds are getting certified by other people and teaching your stuff for other people." And I was like, "Well, it's all right." "No, it's not all right," because James is very tribal. He's like, you're loyal to your tribe, and that's just how it works. So we went around for about close to a year, and I said, "All right, I'll start certifying people." And I guess about 2011, 2012, I started actually certifying people in CPI, and then it went to Killer Influence, and then ultimately real-world hypnosis, or Renegade Hypnosis first, and then it would change it to real-world hypnosis. And now we do certifications, and we got NLP certs, we got all kinds of very application, very practice-driven, skill-intensive trainings that we do. but it's based on your ability to actually do the frickin' work, right? But it goes back to context. Most of our skills, most of our personas that we walk around in are context driven. So part of your job is to recognize at any given moment, who does the person need to be for them to make the decision I want them to make? Then the next question is, who do I have to be in order for you to be the person who makes the decision I want you to make? And when you change you properly, the other person has to change automatically. Or they leave. Either way, problem solved.
Yeah.
Right? The person who holds the frame the longest and the strongest controls reality. Yes?
So we're back to state control again.
Absolutely.
That's right where we're
At the end of the day, state control. How you control yourself. The uneducated, the uninformed, they run around trying to control everybody else. And they get exhausted, frustrated, and broke. The real ones, the real power, the real masters control themselves, and everybody else around them changes. Okay? That being said, how are we doing on time? I want to break us at 12. We got about a half an hour, so I guess we'll start with our first state control exercise. This technique is called Master and Commander. Many of you know it, many of you do not. So the first thing we need to understand about state control is state control comes in two categories.
Is there a page listed on there?
Actually, yes. If you go to CPI state control, that's a tab on your thing. Okay. And I do reserve the right to skip around because as the dynamic of the group evolves, I see where we need to go. If there's something that you specifically want me to cover, write it down so you don't forget it and make sure I get it, and we'll find a way to work it in a way that's relevant to the rest of the group. Do you have a question? You're waving your glasses at me and it's very seductive, and I just wanted you to know that. Okay.
David, I have one question.
Yes.
In talking about controlling your state,
Mhm.
talking about overcoming those things right here that we talked about.
Oh, these are the categories of resistance that you're going to run into, so that
That's
you
in
can.
other people and in yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's in both.
Mm-hmm.
So the things that we're talking about is because your premise is I have to change first before I change everything around,
Or at least be willing to change.
or be willing to change.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's what these things.
Yeah.
These exercises.
Yeah, everything we're
are.
doing, you should be doing these things on yourself first, but ultimately, everything that you're going to experience or every obstacle you're going to run into in terms of self-work, you're going to have to manage in other people or bypass, right? But so when you meet resistance, and a lot of, again, environment and context will be a major factor in how effective you are and what skills you bring to bear on a situation. Okay? People who view covert hypnosis as conversational hypnosis are going to be at a distinct disadvantage against you guys because you don't need your language. You won't need it. You'll understand proxemic hypnotic operators. You'll understand kinesic hypnotic operators. You'll understand haptics. You'll understand object relations theory. You'll understand color theory. You'll understand cold reading. You'll understand how to gain information and link it together and position yourself. These are all things that we're going to be working together. Some will go deep dish into, others will just kind of touch on. Okay? But they're all elements and phenomena that you can tap into to amplify what you do. If all you have is language and you're in a noisy club, good luck. Right? In a noisy nightclub, Gary goes dancing a lot. Trust me, there's loud music. Okay? The primary keys to his success are not going to be linguistic. There won't be you can't do subtle embedded commands in a noisy club. Okay? But you can do a lot of kinesic things that are behavioral rather than linguistic. That position you. Mystery, a very famous pickup artist, is probably one of the best examples of somebody who uses behavioral hypnosis, social hypnosis, to create effects. Now, any form of seduction is directly applicable to any other social interaction. Because seduction, or the dance of intimacy, that I call it, going from complete stranger to the mating process, is the archetype of all social interaction. It's just a question of degree and intensity. Okay, so many of the same principles that we utilize in a dating or seduction context will carry directly over into a sales process, into a therapy process. Some of my most powerful therapeutic techniques come from the seduction world because it's a hostile environment. It's an environment where the people you're seeking to interact with, the people you're seeking to influence, A, don't know what you're doing. They don't have a vested interest in following along. In many cases, they're actively resisting because they have defense mechanisms up, and you have to be successful. You hone a technique in that environment, you take it into any other environment where you have acquiescence, you have compliance, you have a desire. It's easy. Easy. Okay? It's a very martial way of looking at influence. But all martial arts is another form of communication.
Yeah.
Solid communication.
It's all it is. And you have people.
That's pretty much it. Just kind of think so.
Okay? Neurologically, when I touch you on a pressure point, I'm sending information into the body that's telling it to do something.
Okay.
And it does. That's communication.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Oh.
Huh. Everything we do, from martial arts to hypnotherapy to sales and marketing, is just communication, which is actually just movement.
Vibration.
You just keep going up higher on levels of abstraction, and all of a sudden you find the connecting threads, and then you can really start to play. But we get too abstract, we wind up in the ozone. Right? Remember, at the end of the day, if you can't apply it, it's not worth it. Right? So we're going to give you theory, but it's really about application. So what we're going to do now is we're going to begin to start talking about state control. We won't get all the way through it, but we will start to talk about state control from the world according to David. We'll go into like like the master and commander technique, which is our first experience with understanding and tapping into state control. We'll break for lunch, we'll come back, and we'll get deeper into advanced state control and rapport. Okay? Because remember, it's how we manage our body states that determine the amplitude and the strength of the signal that we send to another person's nervous system. It's not just about rapport. It's about how strong that signal is that we send. And the fastest way to generate that is by changing our body states. Okay? So, first thing to understand is state control comes in two varieties. State control 1, physiological. Volitional. What do I mean when I say volitional? Willpower. Willpower. There's a saying and a belief that you can't make people do things against their will. That is a lie. Because that would imply that people actually had a will to resist. Most people do not, especially in our modern times. Most people, in order to muster any kind of will, have to generate some kind of an emotional response. Anger, desire, arousal, some kind of emotional arousal in order to express willpower. Okay? Your willpower is not an abstract concept. It's actually based on two physiological phenomena, or nutrients. Blood sugar and sleep. That's not a command. heard half the room going in. I was like, oh shit. That's not a command either. First book you want to get, if you haven't got it already, a book called Willpower by Roy Baumeister. Baumeister.
Can you spell that one more time, please?
Baumeister.
What was the
Baumeister.
Yes,
B-A-U.
I know.
Okay. The book is called Willpower. And it's a study of this phenomenon. Your willpower is based on the amount of blood sugar in your system and the amount of sleep that you've gotten. You burn up willpower units. We'll call them self-regulating units. You have a finite amount. You burn them up every time you have to exert control over your emotional states or your primal drives. Okay? This is why most diets fail. When you run out of SRUs, which are the functional units of your willpower, you will default to hedonistic, primal, unconscious behaviors.
That's when you're out of them?
Yep. Let's say I am supremely gifted with 60 units of SRU, 60 units of willpower. I have children, which means I am always depleted of SRUs at any given moment. But let's say for all intents and purposes, I have 60 in my tank. I get up. As I get up, the first thing I notice is that my youngest daughter, Sophia, has crawled into bed with us. And she's snuggled up. And then I notice the warm, moist sensation spreading underneath me. 7 SRUs gone. I get up, move my daughter, all the while stuffing down the urge to throw her out the window. Another 3 units gone. I go and I get changed. And my middle child gets up. And of course, she doesn't want her sister, big sister, to dress her. So she throws her morning tantrum. And one of my biggest pet peeves is loud, shrill noises that don't stop. 15 SRUs gone. I throttle the urge to throw yet another child into the garbage disposal. We get the children ready. I have my breakfast. I get a few back. I get in the car. I'm driving to the office. I'm on my diet. I ate good. I had my little protein thing. Good. Driving. I'm passed by Krispy Kreme. I'm thinking, well, the rationalization factor kicks in. I'm on a diet, but the guys at the office, the guys at the training would probably enjoy those donuts. I'll live vicariously through them. I go in, I order all my favorite donuts for you. And I have them in the seat, and I'm driving. 3 SRUs gone. Ring a bell? I get to the office, I get to the training. I discover that I miscounted, the number of books I have, and I've got like 15 extra books that I spent $700 to have made. 8 SRUs gone. We go throughout the day and various things here and there. At the end of the day, I'm down to my last 5 or 6 SRUs. But I made it. I made it. I'm driving home. Some motherfucker cuts me off. 4 more SRUs gone. Right? So I'm running on fumes now. I'm like, we're almost home. I get home. I walk in the door. My lovely wife is waiting there with that look on her face. You know the look. The look that says, you dead man walking. Right? Goes, You were supposed to pay X bill. Asshole! Gone. 5 minutes later, I'm in the refrigerator chugging down, eating the cheesecake, grabbing whatever pizza's left. Why? I gotta feel good. I gotta get rid of this. I gotta get something back. Right? That's the human experience. We burn up our SRUs every time we have to control ourselves. Anytime we have to exert emotional control. Okay? Anytime we have to quiet a certain level of neurological arousal. One of the fastest ways to override the critical factor is what? Intense emotion. Any form of emotion is neurological arousal. The higher the level of arousal in the nervous system, the faster your willpower checks out. If I can give you a sudden spike of adrenaline, your conscious mind will just bail, whether you have SRUs or not. You'll just go into overwhelm. But as your day becomes more taxing, as you have to deal with more stuff, you start to burn the tank. At the end of the day, you get home, there's nothing left. Unconscious drives kick in, you start chugging the beers, eating the cheesecake, and watching internet porn, whatever it is you do. Anything that gets you free, anything that gives you some kind of pleasure, hedonistic responses that relieves stress. Okay? The caveat is, willpower is the junk candy of the mind. It's a finite resource, and it will bail on you the moment the fecal matter hits the rotating oscillator.
Do people that have what seem to be unusual high amounts of that the willpower units, is that genetic or is that?
Each of us has.
Because some people seem to have a lot more than
Yeah,
others.
it's unique to each of you. It can be trained. Special forces people are trained to be operational in high-stress environments.
That was my next question. Can you build up
Yes.
to where you're not waking up
in
with
fact,
60, you're waking up with 80?
Yeah, in fact, Baumeister in his book, actually, I think he actually gives you some drills and things that you can do to start developing that. Martial arts is a good way to do it too.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because as long as you're not doing the whole bliss out thing,
Right.
where you you get on the treadmill, put on your earphones, and just pretend you're not doing anything. You know, being in it and being mindful is where you develop that willpower.
Right, because I've read some interesting things. You can't really prove them because they're books in its history, but metaphysical books where people develop abilities to do things that you just go, wow, that's almost like superhuman. You know, that you could, have that much influence, do physical acts that are just, you're just going, that's way, way beyond what I've ever experienced anybody doing in my life anyway, or see people do things. And
You will.
Yeah.
That's where you're going,
Right.
especially if you hit vibrational influence in October.
Mm-hmm. Y'all be awake. Yeah.
That's where this is foundation training for it. Right? You have to have state control. You have to have demonstrated competency in self-guided trance work, which most of you have done because you've been through my other trainings where you've done the timing and things like that. To get really good at those kinds of things, you must be good at trance. The reason like a lot of these courses on psychic skills and things like that are hit or miss is because they don't spend enough time on actually drilling trance.
Right.
Trance is the fundamental skill. Whether you're doing martial arts, meditation, music, art, it's the trance states that you access and the function and the degree of functionality within those trance states that determine your level of success.
And,
Yes.
oh, sorry. No, go ahead. So is the sovereignty that you move to by learning these skills, is it more like not being in a trance state or just exerting conscious influence over which trance state you want to go into?
You're never not in a trance.
You're never not in a trance.
The question
So it's
becomes
just choosing
being able to decide at any given moment what trance is appropriate and going into it as a choice. And when you find yourself in a trance state due to randomness or by default, getting out of it.
So that could even be something as simple as like if you're angry, taking 10 deep breaths.
Yeah. Most people don't have that level of self-awareness.
To even know when they're angry.
And they can't control their state. And this is why I'm starting with volition first because it's the one we want to rely on the least, but it's the one we do the most, and it fails the most. Your willpower will be the first thing to check out when you try to control your state. Okay? Because our emotional states are driven by our physiology, not by our neocortex. Important to understand. We work with the other 2/3 of the brain to control our state, not the weak 1/3. Okay, but we work with the body as well. So, everything that we're dealing with, and this is one of my big concepts, is this thing called feedback loops. Let's say I have a problem with my liver. Okay? I have a sickness or a condition in my liver that I need to get medicine for. If I have a syringe full of medicine, I can inject it into my arm. Will it eventually get to my liver?
Yes.
Okay. If I inject it into my leg, will it eventually get to my liver? If I inject it into my heart, will it eventually get to my liver?
Assuming you don't stop your heart.
Yeah. If I inject it directly into my liver, will it go to my liver?
Most likely.
Most likely. What's the variable?
How long it takes.
How long it takes. Everything in the body works on a feedback loop. One of the most common ones we deal with in hypnosis, the one we most often see is the mind-body feedback loop, right? The mind affects the body affects the mind. We impose a strong enough change in either one, it will eventually affect the other. Can't not happen. A similar feedback loop exists between your physiology, in other words, your posture, and your emotions. Every emotional state that we generate has a corresponding physiology, posture, and breathing rate. Every physiology that we take on or assume creates a specific kind of emotional state. So we can use one to affect the other. Because most of what we do cognitively is generated organically, in other words, in the brain, which is part of the body, anything that starts in the body tends to have more push and amplitude than something we just do with our thought and try to reverse it the other way. So while you can affect the mind or affect the body using the mind, it is actually much easier to affect the mind using the body. Does that make sense? The mind-body feedback loop is important. There's another one that we use, especially, and we'll talk about it a lot later on, about rapport. Anybody here not know what I mean when I say rapport? If you don't, that's okay, because what we're going to talk about ain't your mama's rapport. All right? In rapport, we have this concept we call pacing and leading. When we pace someone, what we're basically doing is copying something that they're doing, thinking, or experiencing. We're matching it. Or in some cases, mirroring it. But we're identifying something about them and doing it too. Right? A lead is something we want somebody else to do. Experience, blah, blah, blah. Okay? In the world of rapport building and pacing and leading, we have these two concepts called matching and mirroring, which I've just touched on a little bit. Ed, come on up here for a sec. If Ed is standing a certain way, he assumes a certain physiology, okay, and I do the exact same thing, I am matching Ed, right? Let's say Ed sticks his left hand in his ear, and I stick my right hand in my ear. right? I am now mirroring Ed. If Ed were looking at his reflection in a mirror, this is how he would see it. He wouldn't see this.
You wouldn't.
Right? Unless he's taking some serious drugs or in trance or something. Right? So if I do exactly what Ed is doing, his left hand is in his left ear, my left hand is in my left ear, I am matching him. If I create a mirror image of him, I am mirroring him. Right?
Yeah.
Thank you, Ed.
What's the difference in the results?
The difference is that we have in my experience, NLP will tell you that there isn't one. Many Ericksonians will tell you that there really isn't one. They both work. They do both work. Mirroring tends to be more powerful.
Because it seems
It
to
signals
find-
sameness.
Okay.
Signal sameness. When you mirror somebody, Tad James used to teach, and I haven't heard anybody else say this, but I found it to be relatively true, that when you mirror somebody properly, your voice tends to sound like their internal dialogue. And we never resist what we say to ourselves. You ever notice that? Right? But this whole concept of pacing and leading and matching and mirroring, the masters will tell you that if you want to get rapport with somebody, copy their gestures, and you'll fall into rapport. But there's another school of thought that says, no, 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 no. Matching and mirroring is what happens when you get rapport. You ever notice that when you just connect with somebody, you just start doing what they do? Automatically?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And so the two sides will sit there and argue with each other about who's right. Exactly. The truth is both are true. Rapport will generate matching and mirroring, but matching and mirroring can generate rapport. But that's not good enough for me. Okay? Because the truth is rapport is going to happen anyway. Whether you match and mirror or not. Because we live in a physical universe. And in that physical universe, we have laws. Oops. One of the primary laws of physics is this principle we call entrainment. Edward, what is the law of entrainment?
It says that if you have a series of items that are moving in different rhythms, that it will eventually become rhythmic.
Exactly. In other words, if I take a room full of clocks, all with pendulums, swinging at different rates, and I put them in a house, all by themselves, within a very short time, all of the pendulums will start to swing together. Because they're made of molecules, and anything made of molecules, i.e. anything that moves, has a frequency. And all frequencies seek harmony. They seek synchronization. What's the variable?
The time.
Time. Right? Just the fact that you're all in this room, even though none of you are in the same physiologies, you all have a deeper level of rapport than you did when you got in here. Because, are you made of molecules?
Mm-hmm.
Are you vibrating?
Yep.
Everything you're going to be praying with is based on the law of physics. This is a really cool video. You can see it. These are 41 separate metronomes, all moving at different rates. They have no nervous system. They are machines. They just do what they're told. Or do they?
Surprising how fast it's happening.
Yeah, they lied to us. Doesn't take hours. Just under 5 minutes. You just got to be a little patient. can't not happen. You just got to feel when it does. Almost like, got you again, didn't I, motherfucker? Because a trained nervous system can do it practically instantaneously.
Yeah, they can.
But we're not trained, most of us. Right?
How do you train that?
If only there was a way to do that. That's where you're going.
Practice.
You have to learn how to get back into your bodies. You have to learn, or in this case, not learn, but to remember the first language you ever learned, the language of the body, the language of feelings. That was your first language. It's what you communicated in the womb to mommy with. It's that part of you that always seeks connection. The part of you you've forgotten. Because the school system, religion, the government, television, movies, books have taken your minds somewhere else. If you want to become more fully human, you have to get back into your bodies. You have to become more self-aware. And when you do, magic happens. But it's not magic, exactly. It's science. Because the most powerful rhythmic source in the body is the human heart. Your heart, in addition to being the most powerful rhythmic source in the body, radiates an electromagnetic field 8 feet in diameter that can be measured with instruments from the body. Which means my heart radiates an energy field 8 feet in diameter. Miguel's heart radiates an energy field 8 feet in diameter. Do they intersect anywhere? Yeah, you betcha.
16 feet.
Within 16 feet, motherfucker. And that's if they're just alone in a room. But his energy field's touching Mike's energy field. Mike's energy field is touching JJ's energy field. JJ's energy field is touching Daniel's energy field. You're all just little metronomes.
That's very cool. Sweating.
That concept, where we take it from just an entrainment principle into the field of organic interaction, we call coherence. It's a deeper level of rapport. It's neurological. Your heartbeats can literally synchronize. The thing you need to understand about the human heart is that it has its own internal nervous system. It is autonomous. It has a direct connection to the brain, and it sends more information to the brain than the brain sends to the heart. Okay? Not metaphysics, neuroscience. When they took a dog and his boy out to play, and they had them strapped up to machines, within 15 minutes, their heartbeats synchronized. Not suggestion, physics. Okay? If we can learn to interact with the system at the somatic and physiological level, we can learn to get back into our feelings and regulate the system, we can influence anyone pretty much from anywhere. Okay? Starts with how we use our bodies.